Yo, what's going on? I appreciate everybody tuning in. And hey, I'm very grateful for the over 2,300 subscribers who have subscribed to the channel, people who aren't subscribed, who view, who like, share, comment, who even hit the dislike. I rock. My name is Marcus. You're at the channel, The Debt Free Dad, where we're talking financial takes, financial topics, letting y'all know my opinions and thoughts, letting y'all know what we got going on over here at the DFD household as we are on that debt free journey and a journey to become first generation millionaires. Now, hey, it's 2023, and I like having guests on. And this brother who I'm bringing on, hey, is a very high speed young brother. He had a debt free journey that he made progress on. He purchased his first home, and this brother is still in his 20s. So he is setting a great example. And I probably should have drunk some coffee because his introductions just be so hype, and now I want to match that energy. So, hey, I want to introduce the host of the Rambling Mind podcast. He has a YouTube channel, Kaleche Iuba. You can check it out. It's tagged in the description box. Let's go ahead and tag him in. Let's show him some love so we can talk about finances and learn a little bit about him, his journey. And of course, we're going to throw some topics around, but we're going to have to stay constrict because we got some strict time frames. So let's just go ahead and tag my brother in. What's going on, my Nigerian brother? How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. What's up, everybody? Name's
Hey.
Kalechi, and this is gonna be fun, I think.
Yeah, man, this is going to be dope, man. I know he anytime is World Cup or something's going on in Nigeria, my brother represents, and 60% Nigerian, respect it. So we had to talk about that beforehand. But before we dive in, I always like to ask all of the guests. And if you look in the description, if you look in the chat, you'll see I put a link to the Rambling Mind podcast, so you all can go check it out, you Apple guys. But it's also on Spotify and Stitcher as well. And I make sure we have all of the IG and everything linked up in the description, so you all can check it out. Okay. Now, I always like to start with tell us a little bit about your background with money, because you have some people who come from the school of hard knocks. You have people who got the financial gems and structure early on. So tell us about your early upbringing with finances and how that went.
Yeah, I'll say it was kind of both sides a little bit for us growing up. So I grew up in Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria until I was about 12 years old, and then I moved to the States. And I won't lie, in Nigeria, my family was pretty well off. Like we lived a pretty comfortable life. Things were pretty good for us back home. And then when we came here, things kind of switched up a little bit. We hit some rough patches over the
Mm.
years. Things were kind of hard. And during those years, it was I learned a little bit more about money and how to kind of save for the stuff that I wanted. And I learned, even though like my parents, they did everything for like I won't even trip. Like my parents, they did everything that they possibly could for us and made
Right.
everything as simple and as good as possible for us. But there was still some times where you looked and you saw like, yo, my friends have all this stuff and I don't have any of that stuff. And you start comparing and all this comparing and contrasting and lifetime. Sometimes your lifestyle was just different from your friends. You couldn't do some of the things that you saw some of your friends doing, even though your parents were doing the best that they can. So I learned a few tricks. So one of the biggest things that I'll say, I'm so grateful for my mom doing this was when I was younger, she would make me go cut the grass of other people. So, and she wouldn't just give me like allowance to do whatever. So she would like say, if you cut the grass, I'll pay you. And if you cut somebody else's grass, they can pay you too. So that like taught me a little bit of the idea of like cutting grass and getting paid for it. Even though I didn't enjoy doing it, I'm not the type of person who's like on the Gary V wave of like, yo, when I was young, I started doing this and I wanted to hustle and make the money. And that was never me. Like
Right.
the only reason I ever did it was like, yo, I want to buy this video game. And in order for me to buy this video game, I need a little bit of extra dough. So I'm gonna just cut this grass for like a couple people and get this money and go buy this video game. There was never like a let me think about the business thing and how much more I can make. Nah, that was never me growing
Right.
up. But it did teach me like if you want something, sometimes delaying the gratification and saving up for it can be a good thing. So that was like one of the beautiful things of growing up. Even my brother, my mom, Nigerians, one of the things you learn very quickly about Nigerians, like school is very important. So growing
Right.
up, actually working while you're in high school was not something my parents wanted us to do. But my brother kind of finally broke that mold. But just like some of the lessons that I learned of just diligence, hard work, and those kind of things that my parents taught really, really like helped me learn more about money. Just in the sense of like they always said, like if you don't know something, go find out. Like I
Right,
saw my
right.
mom do that, especially when we moved to the States of not knowing anything. They just went to find that information and then they used it to better themselves. And so then that's how I've been with finances. Is like if I don't know, I'm gonna do some research, figure it out, and try and do the best that I can possibly do. So
Right. That's dope, man. I mean, it's dope to see both sides of the spectrum because all it does is just broaden your outlook. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So to see both sides, and you got, like you said, you got those gems instilled in you early, regardless of what your situation may have been. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So
yeah,
that's definitely a plus. So let's take a quick pivot, man, and let's talk a little bit about your journey. Now, when it comes to this YouTube thing, I really love watching people who have stories. I say it all the time. I watched a 67-year-old guy teach himself how to skateboard because it was the pandemic and he was working from home and he needed something extra to do. And I don't know if I was watching to see him succeed or fall, but the story, but right, but the story was me to me. So like fitness journey, finance journey, I love that. And so you have a journey where you had a epiphany and was like, you know what, I'm got some debt, I need to clean it up. Tell us a little bit about your debt-free journey first.
yeah. So what is it? You see, it's like you learn some lessons when you're young, and then you just forget all about it once you get into college, and you're like, I do what I
Right,
want,
right,
type of thing. So I got my first credit card like senior year of college. Avoided it the whole time through college. I thank God for that. And then senior year of college, right before we graduated, I was like, yo, I need credit of some sort to be able to start doing some stuff. So got a credit card, got my first job, and in my head, I'm making more money than I've ever made in the world, more money than I've ever seen. And I'm
right.
like, yo, I'm set. I'm good. Everything's straight. And then I started working, but I hated my job. So that's like, I
Mm,
hated going to work, all of this stuff. And so you start dabbling and stuff, all the tech videos that I've ever watched, all the stuff that I saw in those videos, I can finally just buy them. So I just started buying all of them. And then I was traveling back home. I lived in another state. So I was traveling back home regularly. I was also dating somebody who was out of state. And I was also flying her out to see me or flying out to see her. And so I was spending money all kinds of ways, all over the place. And then one day, and then one day I got a letter from the IRS, and the IRS was like, "Yo, you owe us $10,000." And I was like, "You said
uh-oh.
what now?" You said who? I said, "Hold up, I just started working, like, bro, I just started working. What do you mean I owe you $10,000?" So then that happened, and then after that, after that, I was just like, "Yo, something's got to change." Like, it was just like I woke up, I was like $10,000 from the IRS, and then I was just like, things were just kind of getting stressful for me with money and everything. I was like, why should I be getting stressed? Like, I literally have no responsibility. Like, this should not be hard. Like,
Right.
life should be easy. And so I was just going through, and I just sat down one day, and somebody was like, you should just do your net worth. Write down how much you have versus how much you don't have, or how much you owe. And I wrote it all down, and I thought like it would come out to be a positive number, and it came out and it was negative $10,000. I was like, I owe $10,000
The
in credit card
IRS
payments.
money.
Yo, I was just like, no, it was negative $20,000 because I owe $10,000 to the IRS and $10,000 to credit cards. And I was just like, something's got to change. And so it was
Right.
just like beginning of 2017. I was just like, I need to start making some changes. I was listening to Dave Ramsey hard.
How old
Uh,
were you at that point when you said something's got to change?
let's see, so this was 2017, I was 21.
Okay. Oh,
I was
good,
21.
good, good.
Uh, Wait, was that 21? What's 2017 to this 2022? No, I was 23. My bad. I was
Okay.
23 years old. Um, and so it was so at church before I actually started working, before I moved for work, we had started doing the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University
Mhm,
stuff in
mhm,
church.
mhm.
So I had all the stuff, never opened it. Just was settled on top of the thing. I had
Right,
never
right.
read it, never done anything with it. And I was
You had
like,
the book, the workbook.
I had the workbook, the book, the poster, everything, the CDs, all of it, and I never opened it. And it was just like it was like, what is it? Dave Ramsey always likes to say, when you get tired of being tired, then you start
Right,
making
right,
a change.
right.
So that's literally what happened. I got tired of being tired, and I was like, I need to make a change. And plus, I also hated my job, and I was like, in order for me to quit, I need to at least save some money. In order for
Mhm,
me to
mhm.
save some money, I need to get this debt out of the way. And so I was just like, because in my head, I was like, I can't just go back home. Like, I can't just like, oh, hey, ma, I'm quitting my
Yeah,
job. I owe
nah,
all this debt. Da 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 da.
nah.
After all the sacrifices you and my pops made,
Yeah. You're
coming
not
over
built like
here,
that.
helping me through school, and now I'm telling y'all, oh, by the way, this job. Like, no, I'm not about to do that. So I was just like, okay, we just need to grind. And so the thing that really pushed me was one, I hated my job and I wanted a change. Plus, I was just tired of being tired all the time. And so I was just like, all right, we're gonna start making some changes. I was listening to Dave Ramsey going to work, while at work, going home, while at the gym, eating food. Every single hour of the day, I was just listening to Dave Ramsey show all the time, reading the book and figuring out like all those little baby steps. And then I started doing research of like, okay, what do I do with my money? And for the longest time, I was like a Dave Ramsey stan. But then,
Mhm.
you start learning more and you open yourself up to other things. But yeah, that's what got me started. And it's just basically being frustrated and going
Right,
through
right.
pain.
That's
Yeah.
what was the biggest thing that you had to do to get out that hole? Was it budgeting? Was it cutting back and identifying the needs versus wants? What was the most important thing that you had to do to get your affairs in order, you think?
Literally, I think as much as I don't like to use budgets now, which is so ironic, but it was me sitting down and saying, where exactly is my money going? Like,
Right,
what is
right,
happening?
right.
Actually taking the steps, which ironically I was using Mint, right? Which is so funny. I was using Mint and everything was like being tracked in the background, but I wasn't paying attention to it
Yeah, you weren't worried
until
about that feature.
exactly. I
I've
was
been
like,
there.
it's whatever. It's like it's there, and I have the opportunity to be able to do this, but I wasn't doing it. So, but it was actually once I started like making a budget and then sticking to the budget, I saw like, oh, I have so much room with money all over the place. Uh, let me actually do what I need to do for this. So,
Okay, bet,
yeah.
bet. So that I mean that's dope that you had that, you had that kind of, enlightening moment at such a young age. A lot of people don't get that moment till they just deep, deep, deep. So you were deep, but you were at a point where you could dig yourself out of that ditch. So
Yeah,
that's definitely a dope thing. Now the
yeah.
other thing I checked out that I know you did recently is purchase a home. Okay. So and we're gonna get back to I think probably one of the very few things I think you and I disagree on. Okay, this maybe is a few things out there, but we'll get back to we'll put that to the side.
I
Okay, so
would. Yo, I'm excited for that part because I want to see how everyone in the chat how they react to like my stance on it. It's gonna be interesting.
right, and I think it's gonna be a mixed bag. I think you're gonna find
Hmm.
50-50.
Yeah.
And I got an interesting video I did where I broke down from the time I purchased my home in November 2017
Hmm.
and I was renting, based on the rental increases to now, which one was the bigger cost saving? Yeah, I even calculated what I paid for my insurances. I went back and tracked all the expenses. So we're gonna talk about that. But you got your first home purchase, okay?
Thank
So
God.
at what point before you made your purchase did you know one, I want to purchase a home? So you started to address and get your income and your budget in a position to put you in a position to be it? Was it 1 year, 2 years? How many years was it before you knew and you started to get your affairs in order to purchase your home?
So buying a house was like 5 years in the making for me.
Okay.
So
Okay.
after I quit that job, after I was like, deuces, I'm out of here. I moved from North Carolina to Atlanta, from Raleigh to Atlanta, and in that move, the question, like I still remember me and my mom got into like a whole discussion and argument
Okay. You
about
was
it.
a you was a RDU person, so you
Yeah.
probably been the Charlie Good Nights and all that.
Nah, well, I say Raleigh, but really I was in a small town called Gold, which is another reason I hated it. I was in a small town called Goldsboro, which is like,
Oh yeah, I know where that's at.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know
So I
exactly
was,
where
I
that is. I'm
was
a central guy, so I know where that's at.
okay, okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah. So I was not, it's not the most exciting thing for me. So that's why I wanted to move. So I moved from there to Atlanta, and I remember I had a discussion with my mom, and part of it is like I was on this Dave Ramsey wave thing, um, but I moved and I was like, yeah, I want to buy a house eventually. Like I would like to stay in Atlanta for a long period of time if it works out that way. So I would like to buy a house, but I wasn't really like thinking too much about it because at the same time I was like, I also want to go back to school and get my master's. So I was just like, I'm gonna wait. So that was like 2018 when I moved to Atlanta, and me and my mom talked about it, and she was like, "Yo, you should do it right now. You can do all this stuff." And I was like, I gotta have 20%. I gotta have this. I gotta have that. And I'm like, I was just like, I'm just not gonna do it. So I just didn't do it. So it took finishing grad school in what 2020, finishing grad school, paying all of that stuff off. And then 2021 was when I was like, all right, now we're focusing all 2021 on getting all the money that I need for a down payment to put on the house in 2022. So it's about a 5-year stint of like the idea coming in the head of like, hey, we could probably afford to buy a house. Only problem is, this is one thing I wish I knew, that you could house hack. I had no idea about house or any of this stuff. If I knew that, bro, I would have jumped into this thing a long time ago. But like that was like the idea popped in the head of like, yo, we can buy a house. But it took me like 5 years, which I think part of it is like necessary because there was a lot of development that I needed for myself and
Right.
But like it was about 5 years of just like my finances were fine. Like I could have bought a house at any point in time I wanted to. But it was just I was like, I still want to go back to school, get some more accreditation done, and then buy a house. And it took about 5 years from when I was like good to actually execute.
Okay, so now that we kind of got that story and that background of your debt free journey, how you took care of that, and the time from the time you thought about buying a home and the things you had to do, let's talk about a few financial topics. Okay, first one we're gonna throw out there. I like to call this. We're not gonna call it. Well, I typically refer to it as financial overrated or underrated. Okay,
Okay.
so
Okay.
the first thing I want to throw out there is purchasing a home, your first home, putting 20% down. We know the Dave Ramsey rule. And yo, I used to be in a Dave Ramsey chat group. I had to get out of that place. I made one comment. I made one comment that was kind of Ramsey-ish. And man, they came for my ass. I was like, yo, bro. I said, y'all Ramsey cast is too hardcore for me. Let me go and get out of this chat. I'm doing my own thing. I can't even remember what it was. I think I said something like, and I think it was justified. I think I said something like, yeah, the $1,000 emergency fund while you're in baby step 2 doesn't work for me because had I only had $1,000 when I had a brain aneurysm, my family would have been homeless. So I always keep a stack emergency fund. They was like, no, that's why you got insurance. I was like, man, y'all guys, they let me have it in the comments, man. So the first thing we talk about, overrated or underrated, buying your first home, 20% down. What's your take on that?
Overrated. So overrated. Like the amount of overration on
The
that.
amount of overration.
Oh my God. I'm so like, at this point in time, the reason why I say like I'm so upset with the whole 20% down thing is like that was part of the reason I didn't even buy my house for so long because I really believed I needed to do 20% down. And now it's like more, so you can do more, and so you can share more. So now I'm like Mr. Evangelist of like, no, like all my friends, I'm like, yo, you do not need to put 20% down. Don't waste your time putting 20% down. If you know you're gonna be here, or if you want to do all this other stuff, don't waste your time with 20% down. Because I had other friends who bought houses as well, and who are all like, they didn't all like they understood.
I put 3% down. I put
exactly
5% down. Right?
Literally like 3%. Like he was like, yeah, man, like, bro, just do 3%. Like it's fine. Like I in my head, I was just like, on this Dave Ramsey, no, PMI is bad. PMI is the worst thing you could ever do. But then when you run the numbers, you're just like, what? Like, no, like what? Like, no, like, how is it like paying what $100 over the like, bro? And it's like, wait, I didn't even know you could refinance. Or like I was thinking like, oh, I would have to do an FHA. Even now, you don't have if you have good credit, you can just do a conventional. You don't have to do any of
you just get a conventional and your credit will stand on its own.
Exactly. And once you have 20% in it, it drops off. So it's just like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing over here? What kind of advice is this? And it's like, so yeah, 20% down is so overrated. So overrated. So if you're out there and people keep telling you like, no, you got to do 20% down. No. Not for your first house, at least not for your first house. You do not need 20% down.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Plus, I mean, if I'm showing people my journey, I'd be a hypocrite to say put 20% down on your first home, because I damn sure
Mm-hmm.
didn't put 20% down on my first home. You know what I mean? Like, there are certain things that falls under an exception. Your first
Mm-hmm.
home, yeah, get it under 20%. Your second home, you may want to have 20%. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're a veteran and you can get a VA loan that you don't have to put a down payment and you don't get PMI, as
Mm-hmm.
long as you don't over leverage yourself, go for it. So,
That's
so
yeah. I think this is the thing I learned about Dave Ramsey, and it took me a minute to understand it. Like, he's speaking to the common denominator, right?
facts,
Like,
facts.
and so he's always going to say like the things that will be like the safest
Less risk.
option.
He reducing the risk.
Exactly. And so I had to understand that. And so that's the other thing. Like, if you know, I mean, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, you're probably the type of person who's on top of your finances. You're not going to, like, as long as you keep the basic, what is the rule? Like 25, what is it? Like 25-3-8 or whatever the rule is, that don't go over like 28% of your gross income for your monthly mortgage or whatever, and your total housing cost shouldn't be more than like what, like 30% of your gross income, something like that. I don't even know. But like, as long as you don't break those rules and you give yourself room in your budget, you'll be fine. Like, just, you'll be fine if you can do it that way, rather than like being house poor by over leveraging yourself. So, but yeah, 20% is overrated.
So let me ask you, overrated or underrated? You know, I mean, you purchase your home, right? You purchase your home, they give you the homeowner's protection policy that you pay $1,700 for, and you pay this every year. And when you call them to need something, they don't have the piece, or that's not covered. Do you pay the extra money for that homeowner's protections insurance? Overrated or underrated?
It depends on who you are. So I have a friend, he is Mr. Convenient, so he will pay for convenience all the time. I am Mr. No, I would rather have the money in my emergency fund. And I'll rather have a house fund where if something breaks in the house, I'll just go take care of it myself. So it just depends on who you are and like what you want. But I'll say, for me personally, it's overrated, because I don't like over insurance and over putting everything like, oh, I bought a new gadget, I need to put some kind of insurance. It's like, no, like, if I take care of it, it'll be fine. If I do all the maintenance I need to do on it, it'll be fine. So, but for some people who, if you know you're not the type to be checking up on stuff, you don't want to hassle, it can come in handy. But I also, like you said, I've had those experiences where my friend had a homeowner's insurance thing, not homeowner's insurance, but like home protection, whatever. And then when he called them, it was like 12 months. They still ain't got anything. So we ended up having to fix it anyway. So it was just like, whatever. So, you know, so that's the way that I see it.
Hey, I agree with that. I got burned before. So I just was like, I mean, I was upset. He came out here and I was like, y'all don't do ish, do y'all? Like, you don't even got the piece to fix the leak? Come on now, bro. So I stopped paying that, and I'll tell you, the amount of repairs I've made for my home on average is probably, on average for a year, when I talk about fixing stuff, the average is probably about $1,500 a year is what I spend on average just making repairs. Every now and then, you know, some years you'll have an anomaly where, oh, this was a $3,000 or $4,000 job, but that's definitely not the norm. Okay. So I definitely agree with you. So let me ask you about this one. We're in this finance YouTuber space, right? We're in this where, you know, you gotta, and Matt, let me ask, what is your master's in, bro?
It's in engineering.
Okay, so you're a brainiac, man. See, I went
Says the lawyer. Says the lawyer on here.
Yo, law school is where you go when you're not that sharp, but you're kind of creative and you got a little wordplay. You got the gift of gab. You could think quick on your feet.
All these lawyers, all these lawyers be like, oh, you know, and it's just, they can sit and read all day. I was like, I'm never going to law school. I am never becoming a lawyer. Like, you read, the amount of reading you have to do. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, nah. And then it's always annoying. If you get into an argument with a lawyer, it's the most annoying thing ever.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Get out of my face. It's just like, no.
I
don't people, like arguing sports. I don't like arguing anything with a lawyer. It's just like, why am I here?
I tell folks all the time, I typically don't get along with the general lawyer personality. Like, it's just because most lawyers, they think they know everything. They always right. They don't even want to hear the other argument. That drives me crazy. So I try to be open and receptive to other point of views. You know what I mean? Now I keep whether those point of views are right or wrong to myself, but at least I'm open and receptive. Okay.
So, it might come in one year and go out the other, but you know,
right.
You did.
So when you went to back to school, you just cash flowed your whole MBA program?
I just cash flowed it because I was, and I mean, work helped a little bit. Of course, they paid for some of it, but yeah, I was
Dope,
just like, I'm
dope.
just gonna do it straight cash because I was not gonna take a loan. I did not want to take a loan for it, so I just
Okay, that makes sense. That
yeah.
makes sense. So this question is one I kind of throw out to people as well to get your take on, and I guess it's kind of a two-parter. And I actually came up with a poll I'm gonna probably put on my community page to get this point clear. But okay, a lot of finance YouTubers you see like, oh man, fire movement, financial independence, retire early. Is the fire movement overrated or underrated? Uh-oh. Yeah, I see the gears turning. You got to think
Mm,
about it.
I think it's overrated.
Right,
I
right,
think it's
right.
overrated. I think fire is overrated. I think what really most people want is not the entire fire thing. It's just FI. It's just
That's that.
financial independence.
Thank you.
The retire early part, I think is super overrated.
Right,
I think like everybody wants to get to a point where they're financially independent enough to be like, yo, if I so you can do what you want when you want and how you
right.
want for the most part. But retiring early, I don't think and the other thing that I don't like about the fire movement is like whatever the one is where people basically like do the minimal live on the most minimal
Yeah,
lifestyle.
yeah.
I'm like, you can't sustain that. Like,
Right.
you can't sustain that for your entire lifetime. Like, yeah, it's like it's fun to actually like prove to yourself that you can do that. Like,
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
live on this much, but like, there's just so much that you want to do with your life, and so much you want to experience out here in the world. That lifestyle, I just really do not like. I love the idea of fat fire though. Like, fat fire folks are like the fun people for me because they do like they're like, yo, yes, we want to like retire early, but at the same time, we don't want to live like paupers. Like we're about to be balling
Right,
out
right,
in these
right, right,
streets.
right, right.
So that's like the one that I'm like, yes, that's like the goal that everybody should have. But like retiring early, I don't think retiring early is like a good, necessarily a great thing. Like if you talk to anybody who's done that, they're always like, yo, I lost my purpose, I lost this, I lost that. And then they go back to working anyway. So it's just like
Ri-
everybody goes back to working anyway. So it's just like, okay, well, you know,
I always tell a story of a partner of mine who retired. I think he was 43 or 44. And I was like, yo, why you calling me? I'm at work where you need to be. Like, dude, why? Like, all of your friends in your peer group are probably at work. And then the other thing, statistically, your highest earning money years are like 45 to like
Mhm.
57.
Yep.
Like, those are the years where you're going to make the most money in your profession as possible. And he proved this point to a T. He was out of the workforce for 3 years, 4 years. He went back not because he needed to, but just because it wasn't what he thought it was. And
Yep.
he couldn't get his income back to where it was because, hey, things been passing you by while you've been out there chilling. People been
Yeah.
taking
People
CLE
learning.
courses. People been getting trial experience. There's
Yep.
other people who got more experience than you now, bro. So
Hmm.
I agree. The financial independence is dope. The retire early is cool if that's for you, but I'm with you. I don't want to retire early and go live in some rural place in a
Yeah.
trailer. My wife will kill me.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, the main thing I think, like I said, it's like main thing for everybody is like determine even if you want to retire early, is like what are you retiring to? Like that's the question you got to ask yourself is like, are you just running away from something or are you running to something else? Like I
Right,
know
right.
people who they have a passion for teaching, so but like they also want to make a really good income. So rather than like they're like, I also don't want to try and make like a business or whatever. So they just like they worked, whether they were like financial analyst or whatever, they made a substantial amount of money, retired from that profession, and now all they do is they go teach at the local high school. Like my history
Right, right.
professor, in I said professor, my history teacher in middle school, he retired from his main thing. He had like millions of dollars. He would talk about like you drive a different Porsche every other day, and we thought he was the coolest dude ever. And he would come to class, and he was like the best teacher ever. But he just was like, I don't want to work in this thing anymore, and I just want to come teach. And that's all he
And
did
do
for the
something that's dope. Yeah.
yeah. And so I think it's just like, what are you retiring to? I know people like my boss right now. She's like, I just can't wait for the day that I'm just gonna be like, I'm done. And she's like, at the point, she's like, I once I finish paying off this house, she and her husband are like,
She
I'm gonna
quiet
quit.
retiring. She quiet retire instead
Yeah,
of
quiet
quiet
retirement.
quitting.
She's like,
She quiet
I'm gonna
retiring.
quit and I'm gonna go work for Starbucks because I'm
Right,
like,
right,
I still
right.
want my insurance paid for by somebody else. but I also don't want to just stay at home. But I don't want something that's taxing on me anymore. So I'm just gonna go to Starbucks and be a barista and talk to people and
Yeah,
social. And I think it's like as long as you're retiring to something, it's
you good.
fine. But like
Right.
if you're just retiring to run away from like I just don't want to work, which the idea of I was reading a lot about like retirement. The idea of retirement is so new to the human beings. Like
Right, right, right.
usually you work till you die. Like there was no
Right.
like there was nothing else. And so like retirement is still like a what is this? I think it's like Morgan Housel in his book Psychology of Money said that retirement is really like just less than 100 years old. It's like
Right,
so
right,
it's
right.
still very brand new, but most people, now we just have to figure out don't just run away. There's something about the human beings that we have to put our mind towards something. We
Right,
have to
right.
be in that community aspect or something.
Right. I tell people all the time, man, whenever I decide to hang it up, I'm probably going to have a few clients just so I got to make an appearance in court.
Hmm.
And I said, and I want to be a crossing guard at the local elementary school. I want to get up at 6 in the morning and make sure the children get there. Then I could go work out, go home, eat, then come back at 3 and make sure the children get across safely. And I would be so happy doing that, seeing the kids, making sure they safe.
Hmm.
Like for me, I was like, every time I see the crossing guard, I'd be like, I bet he living the life. I was like, he probably going home, chilling, enjoying his family, enjoying the wife, watch a little TV workout before that. So that I definitely agree with that. You got
Yeah,
to have something to go to.
yeah, for sure.
Now this next question, because now you're talking a little bit about the culture and finances. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Black America, people, African Americans, and finances. Okay,
Hmm.
let's talk about, and we know that there are like we can't be biased. There are things out there that are systematically designed because of their nature and be legislation that's designed to keep certain groups of people back.
Yeah,
This is unequivocal.
yeah.
There's disparities in sentencing for crack versus cocaine. There
Hmm.
are disparities in the bankruptcy law at one point that allowed certain persons with money to use these rules to their advantage while other persons couldn't. So we understand that some of those things do exist. But in our community, and I don't like it bothers me because I see a lot of content, and a lot of content I see from content creators are like, don't be stupid with your money. Don't be stupid and buy name brand stuff. And I understand that because okay, you don't want to do those things. But somebody who came from nothing, I always say you got to have a little bit of understanding because somebody who came from nothing, if I don't have nothing, sometimes, especially if I'm younger, if I don't have nothing,
Hmm.
sometimes the things that makes me feel good is to look good because everything
Yeah,
else is so bad. You see what I'm
yeah.
saying? So this is what I have to make me feel good. I know, yeah, don't buy, but I got to do this because this is valuable to me. So
Hmm.
let's talk about, you talked about comparison early on in this video. We talked
Yeah,
about comparison.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on the role that just comparison plays in society as a whole? Every time you look on social media, I even see some of the finance people I follow on social media. They're like, I got this Porsche. Let me tell you how you can write it off. And I'm like, man, like, hey, salute to you if you got your Porsche. But what do you think about comparison and
Hmm.
how it impacts people's psychological behavior with money?
Yeah. I'm gonna reference. I reference him a lot. Morgan House was probably my favorite writer. I love his book, The Psychology of Money, and I also read his blog all the time. But he said something in his book, which is nobody's crazy. And it's just a nobody's crazy. In other words, the decisions people are making, if you were in their position, you probably would make the same decision. In other words, whatever they're doing with their money and with their finances, when you learn more about their situation and their and where they are in life at that point in
Right,
time, you realize, oh, they weren't crazy. Like they're doing the best that they can with what they think that they have in their hands. And he used the
right,
illustration of the lottery. A lot of people will say like the lottery is like, I mean, you and I know you're better off investing you're better off the $10 that you take and go buy a lottery ticket every single week. It's better for you to take that money and put it into the stock market. Over time, it's going to do better. However, for somebody who they don't have anything, it's for them it's like, yo, this is the lottery ticket is not just I want to make millions of dollars or whatever. It's also giving them something to hope for. It gives
Right,
them
right,
peace
right,
in a day of like, yo, I don't have anything. I don't have, unlike you, like we can talk about all this stuff and like, yo, we have all this whatever invested. But they're like, yo, I can't, all I'm thinking about is like, how am I going to feed myself the next week? How am I going to feed
right,
myself the next day? You're telling me to go from that to start thinking about 10 years compounding? Like, yo, that doesn't compute for people in that sense. And I think that is something where, especially when it comes to finances, as we're trying to educate people, it's always good to take a step back of like having an empathetic view to say
mm-hmm,
everyone is coming from a different perspective and everyone sees the world differently. How we grew up, how we learned, where we grew up at is going to play a big role into how we see the world. But the thing is, as human beings, we believe like we believe like our viewpoint of the world is what everybody else should be seeing of the world too. But really,
right,
our viewpoint only makes up like a 0.00000000001% of what anybody thinks is happening in the world. But we think it's just what's going on. As far as comparison, I'll say this: I struggle with comparison. Like,
mm,
I struggle heavy with comparison. Like, I'm always looking at other people and saying, like, "Wow, look at what they're accomplishing. Why can't I accomplish that as well?" Like,
right,
you
right,
see,
right,
especially when I see people my age doing some of the things that I want to be doing one day, or I want to be able to aim to do. It's like I'm always looking at it and I'm always like, what is the difference between you and I? Like, why am I not doing the things that you're doing with your life, or why have I not accomplished the things that you're doing? And it always goes back to something my sister always told me, and it's like, yo, everybody's on their own journey. Everybody walks a
right,
different path. And also realizing everybody optimizes for different things, right?
mm-hmm,
So it's like, am I willing to pay the sacrifice or pay the cost for them to be doing what it is that they're doing?
right, right,
And it's like it's something that I've had to come to terms with. I'm still like working through it, and every once in a while it rears its ugly head up, and it's like, man, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do that? But then it's like, yo, are you willing to pay that cost? Are you willing to pay that
right,
price
right,
to be able to do those things? And comparison, it's social media. Social media is designed to make us yearn for something, make us yearn for more, and to keep us attached to it. So like for me, it's every once in a while I just have to be like, you know what? I have to stop listening to some people, even though I like their content, but like I don't need to hear you right now. Not because of you, but because of me.
right,
And I need to
right, right,
protect
right,
myself
right,
from myself. So
right.
I think that's where comparison can it's just it's a dangerous thing. Like comparison is good because it tells us like, yo, these are things I need to aim for, but it's also dangerous because it also shows like it can make you start like being down on yourself.
Right. What's
So
going on, sis? I appreciate you tuning in. And so, and I agree. Like my view is, I don't necessarily think comparison is a bad thing, because
mhm.
for me, when I do compare myself to someone, especially who's a peer, it's it's always as a mechanism to drive me to do something.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
I always say it's I say it's a difference between looking at somebody like, man, I wish I had that. I don't think that's not hating. Hating to me is you see somebody with something and you like, they don't deserve that.
Mhm.
That's what a hater is. But
Yeah.
it's quite often that I look at people who are in my age group, and if you're doing better than me, I get hungry. I'm like, oh man, tell me how you did that. How did you do it?
Mhm.
Because what we
Yeah.
see is always the finished product. We always
Yeah.
see the finished product.
Exactly.
We don't know, like they say, what's the old saying? We see the sausage in the store we
You
buy.
don't know how
We
it's
don't see the
made.
whole butchering process
Mhm.
and how
Mhm.
messy and bloody it is. So
Yep.
I think you hit the nail on the head when we're talking about that. So comparison isn't a good thing because it drives me. Because I never look at somebody else in a hateful way. I used to tell
Mhm.
somebody all the time. I was like, man, one of my mentors in this social media game told me, the your best friends that you'll have in social media are people who have a lesser following than you. Because once people have a bigger following than you, or you have a bigger following than them, or you get close to them, they start to see you as competition. And he's like,
Mm.
it's terrible, but that's kind of the mindset. And
Yeah.
I guess I'm blessed in that regard to where I've always kind of had a mantra of, man, there's enough out here for everybody to eat
Yeah.
in this finance
Yep.
game, in this YouTube game. So that's kind of how I look at it when it comes to comparison. And so it's
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 also
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but that's just what it is. Go ahead. What you about to say, bro?
Yeah, I think it's like, especially when it comes in our space of finances, like it's so easy to, well, I'll say depending on the in the finance game, depending on the way it is, it's now people don't care. People will like post their brokerage accounts and all this stuff. But generally, it's also like money is the one thing that people can brag about. Like
Right,
people
right,
can't
right.
necessarily, people will not necessarily be out here bragging about like, yo, did you see me put my children to bed? Like, yo, I went to bed
Night,
time.
night, night,
I
night.
did
Rock 'em to
bedtime
sleep.
with my baby last night. Like people don't brag about that, even though that's like what we should be bragging about. Or like, yo,
Right,
man, me and my wife had date night and it was like really wholesome, and we had all this talk about the future, and we did all like nobody brags about that stuff. Or like,
right,
yo, I
right, right.
cleaned my house, I did this, I did like nobody does that. It's so easy to just be like, look at my bank account. It's like scoreboard, bank account, look at my car, look at this. And it's like, it's so easy for us to use that. And then that becomes like the way we measure ourselves up for like what
Right.
success looks like. And it's no longer like to have like to actually be like my parents are. Like I'll say my parents may not be the most financially well off, but they're extremely successful. They're like successful because to me, they raised four amazing children and every single one of them doing well. It's like those are
Self-sufficient.
now no longer like the things that people. It's all now. It's all about like that monetary financial.
Materialistic,
Yeah.
right.
So it's
Yeah.
just we just have to be mindful of what it is for ourselves. What are we aiming for when we compare ourselves to other people? What are we optimizing our lives for?
Right.
Are we optimizing for the same things other people are? Like, for example,
Right.
Graham Stephan, one thing that I realized, I was watching him one day and I was just like, to a degree, I heard him say something and I was just like, oh, I don't want that. Like, I was just like, oh, I kind of felt bad because to me, it sounded like he said something where he was like, yo, I can't, I'm not gonna rest until I hit the next like 10 million and then 20 million. And then the next, like, I just will never, it will never be enough. And I was just like, bruh, like, I was like, yo, you 20, you're like 30, like, you're 30 and you're already on. And I was like, well, first of all, you got a different mindset from me. Cause
Right,
I was
right,
just
right.
like, yo, I don't want that. Like, it's a different, like, for me, the biggest thing that's most important is relationships. And
Right,
I'm
right.
gonna optimize for that over the next dollar. So, so even though I'm still gonna be like very like hands-on with my money and all this stuff, but still like it's just realizing what is everybody optimizing for. Like I never want to be like Jeff Bezos. I never want to be like Warren Buffett. I never want to be like Elon Musk. I don't want to be like any of these guys because when I look at their lives, I'm just like, okay, they have a bunch of money, but then on the other side, it's like marriages falling apart, children hating them, all of this stuff. And I'm just like, nah, I'm good.
Once
I'm good.
there's only so much stuff you can buy and so many
Mhm.
assets you can have. You know what I mean? And this is something that I think makes me proud. I work more on my and I work on my. I mean, I clearly am conscious and cognizant of my
Mhm.
financial status, but I work more on my physical fitness
Mhm.
than I do my finances. You know why? Because I, I told my son this. I said, look around the landscape. Do you see any old men in that family? No, you don't, because hey, guys in my family, they live hard lives. You know what I mean? They
Mhm.
they they live hard, rough lives. And, and,
Yeah.
and I say, so that's not my blueprint. I don't smoke. I rarely drink. Maybe if it's a social occasion or something like that.
Mhm.
And I say, because for me, time is money is just a resource to make my family comfortable and give them peace of mind. But
Yep.
the most important thing is time. That's the
Yep.
only thing. The reason I focus on my finances is because I want to be able to get the time later on. And to have
Yep.
that time, I want to be in good health when I have that time. So that's
Exactly.
always been kind of my just standpoint. So I think you hit a good point on that.
I
Sometimes,
definitely
even
agree with
though
that.
you might not have as much money as them, you might be wealthier in other areas of life.
That's true.
I
That's
agree with
facts.
that 100%. I agree with that
That's facts.
100%.
That's a good
Well
comment.
said. Now, let's talk about this housing thing right quick, right? As you can see, when we did financial overrated or underrated, we pretty much agreed on most things. Okay. I was like, damn, this is I don't get to argue. I can't argue with my he's thinking like me. This is like a young me right here. What's going on? But there's one thing we don't agree on. Let's talk about home ownership, okay? I saw your video that you did, long form and short. Now, in the financial world, you are adamant about something when you make a long form video. And not when you take a clip of that long form video to make a short, but you make your own independent short about it. So my brother made a long form video about this. Then he did his own independent short, and he had a little fire in his voice. That's why I'm putting some excitement in it. He is of the opinion, we are on two different schools of thoughts. He is of the opinion that your primary residence, the house you buy to live in, is not an investment. Okay. And I'm gonna give you the floor first. Let me just set the stage. And if you're in the comments and you haven't commented, please chime in. But let us make our respective arguments first. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let us have
ding, 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 ding.
Before you deliberate, I want you all to hear all the facts. This gentleman is of the opinion that your primary residence with a mortgage is not an asset. I'm of the opposite opinion. I think it is an asset. I think it is an investment. Before you chime in, I'm passing the floor to you, brother. Your Honor, counsel respectfully yield. Okay, you have the floor. Go ahead. I'm gonna go get a blazer, man. I'm about to go on, man. Give us your rationale for why it's not an investment. Go.
All right. So set the floor, and not to be a what's the word? I don't want to be I won't lie to y'all. I own a house. So I own a home. So even with the fact that I do own a home, I still don't believe your primary residence is.
You see this on the screen? She didn't even let me make the arguments.
Thank you. Shout out to Miss Plan Your Own Life, your one life. Thank you. But again, like for me, primary residence to me, if I'm paying, it's kind of the way I see it is very much like it's a consumable product. Like I'm consuming the home that I'm living in. Now, even if now it's different. Like, of course, you can always leverage it. You can think of it more as an investor. You can think of it more as Brittany. Thank you, Brittany. But you can think of it like I can leverage up my house, or if you house hack, if you do all of this stuff, yes, you can turn it into a pseudo investment. But primarily for most of us who just buy a house and we just live in it, fix everything in it, we pay all the bills in it, we pay for people to come fix stuff, we pay the insurance on it, all of that stuff. When I look at it, all I see in my column on my thing is expenses, cost. And when I think of the whole thing as a whole, like when you start thinking about like the maintenance cost that goes into it, when you think about the long-term interest payment that I'll be making on it, when I compare it to like the return of the actual, like the return on the investment, if I sell the house and I make money on it, when I look at it from that perspective, I'm just like, yo, this is not an investment. This is a consumable good. Like it's just me living in it. It's no different from me like paying rent. I'm basically just paying rent in a different way to the bank. Like instead of paying rent to like a landlord, I'm paying rent to the bank because they still technically they own it. Even though I have the deed, they technically can just come take it from me. And in my end, anything that just can be taken away from me is basically, I just don't see it as an investment. It's just a cost center that I have to continually upkeep. I have to pay attention to, not just with like my hands, but also my time, my energy. I'm just like, nah, a house, your primary residence is not an investment in my opinion. And also, I also say one more thing. The other reason why I'm really adamant about this is also because of kind of earlier I made the comment of Dave Ramsey speaks to the lowest common denominator. I'm also kind of doing that as well when it comes to houses, because most people are not like you, Marcus. Most people are not like, oh, how can I use this in the best way possible? Most people are just like, oh, how can I buy the biggest, fanciest house possible and then put myself in trouble? So I'm just like, and then they always think like the thing that will bail them out is I'm just going to sell it for more. And at that point, you're no longer investing, you're speculating. And so that's just where I come from with the whole argument.
Oh, hey, like I said, I'm open and receptive to other arguments. Now, I keep whether they're right or wrong internally.
Except because the bell is going.
Yeah, so let me ask a few questions. Hey, always gotta, Your Honor, hey, permission to cross-examine a witness? Okay. How long have you been in your home?
Less than a year.
Okay. All right. So relatively new. Okay. And the other question I have, and I'm gonna make the connection to this: do you trade options, or are you familiar with options trading?
I am familiar with options, yeah.
Okay, but you don't trade options, right?
I have when it's I will, and I have when it's like extremely obvious, like when GameStop had its boom, I shorted it or I sold options again,
Because you knew it had to come down.
yeah, and so I did that. And when Rivian was flying really high, it was like, yo, this is too obvious. So every once in a while, when something is stupid obvious and I can make stupid money on the back end, I'm just like, oh yeah, this is a risk-free play for me.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So first of all, okay, I'm clearly taking the counter approach, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Your house is in fact an investment. Okay, and I'm not going to pull up the articles because I don't need to do that. But I'm going to tell you what is a fact. Okay, it's a fact that homeowners versus non-homeowners who are similarly situated have a higher net worth. And the reason is because the homeowners have the equity from the home that's of value. Now, I understand that you're saying that, hey, it's not a profit, just like your stocks on a profit until you sell them. Whatever's in your retirement portfolio isn't a profit until you sell it. So I understand that argument. But if you're one of those persons who go strictly on net worth, my argument would be homeowners have a higher net worth than non-homeowners. It's inevitable. And the number two factor that determines wealth in America historically, it stems on home ownership. The consistency with which you invest is number one. And I think Dave Ramsey always points that out. But number two is home ownership. The number three thing actually is divorce. But 2 and 3 tend to flip-flop at times, marriage, divorce, both of those things. Okay. But this is to my argument, and I'm going to use me as a prime example. And I actually have a video, but I didn't put it out because it was when I had the old whiteboard up and the production kind of corny. So brother may have to do it over and update. Okay. But November of 2017, I purchased my home. For those who don't know, I'm in DC, District of Columbia, relatively expensive area. Okay. So when I first saw a video of this nature, I was shocked and chagrined. I was like, no, it is an investment. So I said, you know what? It took me about a month to sit down. The place I was renting in 2017, I was paying about $2,500 a month. This is 2017. At this time, I was like, I think I can buy a house and pay cheaper what I'm paying monthly. So I was able to purchase a home that's I'm talking about going from a 3-bedroom house to a 6-bedroom house. That my monthly mortgage is $2,200. So this is from 2017. So 2017, I stopped paying a $2,500 mortgage. I started paying a $2,200 mortgage. Yeah. See, because you're young in your home ownership right now, you aren't necessarily getting the benefit, or you don't see the benefit to the consistency of the amount of mortgage you pay, because normally it takes about 36 months for you to see the difference. But I went back and looked at the rates that rents increased in the district just from 2017, and I didn't do it. I did it from 2017 to 2020. I didn't even go to 2021. It was 2017 to late 2020 because, like I said, this was an older video. With the rental rate increases, just based on it increased 7% one year. In 2020, it boomed up 16% one year. Yeah. And so I looked at what the increases would have been, and I went back and factored in what I paid for insurance. I only had that for 1 year. I told you I canceled it because I don't trust it. I went back and looked at my maintenance costs. It still came out cheaper to rent. Now, remember, I was renting a smaller place. Yeah. In 2020, when I did this study, to rent a place that was similarly situated, 3,000 square feet, 6-bedroom, 3-bath, I would have been paying almost $4,000 a month. That's what that accrued to. But me, I'm still sitting here at $2,200. So you know what that difference? You know what I did with that difference? That difference either went to investment or paying off debt, something that directly impacted my net worth. So with that being said, have I convinced you in any form or gave you a different outlook?
I mean, I'll say this. This is one thing I always say with with everything, there's always like caveats. Whatever statement I like, there's always like you can always pick up caveats. I'll say one beautiful thing about homeownership is it does. I do agree with you. Like, I don't think you should forever be rented. Like, you should not. Like, I don't think renting is like you should forever be rented. Now, I do know people who have decided like that's what they're gonna do, and they just say the cost that I could have been put into was like fixing houses or whatever. I just would use that towards investment, and they just throw that extra cash into investment because, like you said, number one, investment is like the number one thing that drives most things.
Right.
So now, and also, I also say like if you want exposure to real estate, there's a way to get exposure to real estate as well.
Without the risk. Right.
Without the risk of like actually owning your own
Repairs
property
and
as well.
landlord.
So
Right.
yeah, exactly. So, but on the other hand, I also say there is a beauty to home ownership of knowing where you're going to be consistently because it gives you some level of peace of mind, which allows you to actually develop yourself to be able to do more things, to be able to take a little bit more risk because you know, like at least I know what my consistent payment is going to be. So those things are definitely valid for sure for like home ownership. However, I guess this is also like another caveat for me. It's also my age group. It's also like
Hmm.
my age of like I'm looking at people around my age and I'm saying like, is this actually the best use of your dollars? Like, if especially for us, if you're not the most like people always like
Right.
to say
Right.
like,
Right.
oh, your house is like a forced saving mechanism. I'm like, yo, no, like a good forced saving mechanism is your 401k because there are penalties if you
Right.
touch
Right.
that
Right.
thing.
Right. Right.
And like, so people will say that and then use a house. And I'll say like a house can be great if you make it great. So you run the numbers, you do all the things you're supposed to do with it, and you make it great for yourself. So if you're young and you house hack, bruh, you're gonna be
You
rolling in that dough. Like you're gonna
definitely
be set.
smart.
Like you're fine. You're gonna be you're straight. I know people who do that and they're good. But
Right.
like if you're just like, yo, I want to buy a house because that's what everybody has told me to do. Because home
Right.
ownership is
Right.
the
Right.
be all end all. I'm like, no, 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 no. Don't just do that. Because even though you said it, I mean, you said like you don't get your money back from your stocks unless you sell it, but you can get dividends. Like generally, I tell most people to just invest in the general stock
Hmm.
market. If
Hmm.
you're investing in just the general stock, you're getting paid dividends. You're making
Right.
that money as
Right.
well. But for most people with your primary residence, you're just living in it and you're putting more cash into it than you're getting out of it unless you do some of the things that we talked about. So there's like pluses and minuses on both parts. But at the end of the day, my main thing is like one thing I did with that video was I wanted to really challenge people's thought process because it's too much of a default, in my opinion,
Right. Right.
of
Right. Right.
everyone
Right.
just saying like, yes, the next thing I need to do is buy a house. And it's
We're
like, no, no,
conditioned
no.
to do that, but
Yeah,
we
we're
don't
just
know
conditioned to
the
like, yeah,
structure of why. Right.
exactly.
Right.
So
I
it's
agree.
like part of it is like I want people to like at least question it. And a lot of people in the comments end up being like, "Oh, hey man, like I never thought of it this way. Like I never thought of it before. I was about to buy a house, but I never really ran the numbers or thought about it. I just thought my everybody in my family was just telling me that's what I'm supposed to
That's what you're
do.
supposed to do.
That's
Right.
what
Right.
you're
Right.
doing
Right.
pretty well. That's what you're supposed. So it's like for me, it's like, do you have an emergency fund? Do you have the ability to own a home, which is something that a lot of people forget. There's a cost to owning something.
Right.
Like
Right.
everybody thinks like, oh, I'm throwing money away when I rent. But like when you own something, there's a cost associated with it. There's a lot of
Yeah.
like hidden costs that you've seen multiple times over as you a homeowner, where you're just like, yo, if you're coming to buy a house, there's nobody you will tell like, oh yeah, just go buy a house, it'll work out. You'll be like, hey man, let me just tell you,
Amen. Right.
prepare yourself when you get into this thing. And I think that's the main thing. But I'll say, like, I agree with you because it is an important aspect of building wealth because
Right.
of
Right.
the
Right.
safety aspect. There's something about having shelter that you own.
Right.
It is a different mentality that comes on your head when you do that. However, if you're not prepared for it, it can be the
Is a curse.
worst decision
Is
you've
a
ever
curse.
made.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so
All
that's where
right.
I just see it.
Hey, I think we generally agree. If you buy it and you're prepared to buy it, is a
Hmm.
blessing. If you
Yep.
buy it and you're not prepared, it's gonna kick you into you know what.
Hmm. Yep.
Yo, I
Oh,
appreciate you, my brother Kalechi, for coming on,
thank you
blessing
so
myself,
much.
blessing my community with your presence, man. Before you get out of here, man, go ahead and give us the church announcements. Let everybody know where they can find you at, and I'm gonna make sure to put everything in the description and pin it in the top comment for this video.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you so much for having me on there. This is fun. I'm definitely going to want to do this again in the future. And we'll probably do more of this even on my show as well, where you can come on there and you can I get to know you, even though I've seen a little bit more of you from your videos, but get to know like a lot more of your backstory, a little bit more of your history and some of the lessons that you've learned. And I can
Definitely.
continue learning from you. But as far as where you can find me on Instagram at by Kalechi Waba. You can find me on TikTok at Kalechi Waba, on YouTube at Kalechi Waba. You can find me on Twitter at Kalechi Waba. I like to post everywhere as much as possible. Usually it's once a day. on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. And of course, the podcast is called the Ramblin' Mind Podcast, where sometimes you just hear me vent about topics that are annoying to me, that people have said something that's sideways, or just me keeping up with the news. But mainly, we talk about money mentality because I believe there's more to money than just the numbers and cents. There's a lot of emotional aspects to money as well. So how do we deal and combat some of that? So anyway, that's all that I got, guys. So if there's one place you want to catch me, go on Instagram at @BuyClutchyWaba.
Yep. Hey, his YouTube is tagged in the title of this video. Everything's gonna be in the description box. Hey, I appreciate y'all tuning in. Y'all take care. Have a blessed weekend. Peace.